My name is Edgar Blake. I'm 58, and if you told me 3 months ago that I'd walk out on my family in the middle of a vacation, not storm out, not slam a door, not shout, but walk, I would have told you you'd mistaken me for someone weaker, someone careless. I spent most of my life enduring things that break other men. Not because I'm proud, because I thought it meant something. We flew to Arizona. The idea wasn't mine. It never is. Molly said we needed air, time, sunshine. The kind of words people reach for when their marriage is bleeding under the surface and they're too polite to name it. A trip, she said, would be a fresh start, a reset. I've heard that word too many times. It's what people say when they're not ready to admit they've already checked out. It was supposed to be 3 weeks. Tucson, Sedona, Grand Canyon. Molly, me, and her daughter Ashley, 24, unemployed, allergic to effort, still lived at home temporarily. That's what Molly called it, temporary. It had been 17 months. I paid for the flights. I paid for the hotel, suite with a view, 2 adjoining bedrooms, balcony that looked out on a desert the color of rust. I paid for the tours, the car rental, the prepaid wristbands for shows and spas. Thousands of dollars, prepaid, poured into a trip that I'd hoped would glue us together, if only because I was tired of feeling like a stranger in my own home. We landed on a Thursday. By Friday night, the cracks were already there. Ashley complained about the pillows, claimed the Wi-Fi was slow, rolled her eyes when I suggested dinner before 9. The concierge offered us 2 show tickets. She said she'd rather stay in the suite and order room service, on my card, of course. I let it slide. I always let it slide. Molly called it adjusting. She's just used to her own space, she whispered in bed that night, as if I was a guest in my own life. I stared at the ceiling fan, thinking about the paycheck I'd split to make this trip happen, wondering when my sacrifices had stopped being visible. But the fracture came the next morning. 4:40 a.m. I'll remember the time until the day I die. The door to the suite slammed open. I was asleep or trying to be. Ashley stormed in like she owned the air we breathed. She stood at the foot of our bed, her voice like ice through my skull. I want this room. Now. No knock. No hesitation. No pretense of respect. Molly sat up slowly beside me, eyes unfocused, robe slipping off her shoulder. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't tell Ashley to calm down. She didn't tell her to get out. She just looked at me and said, "Stop making things difficult. Just give in." Like I was the problem. Like I was in the way. That's when the silence started in me. Not the kind that happens when you're stunned. The kind that replaces something permanent. A silence that has weight. I didn't speak. I just got up, pulled on my sneakers and left. Down the hallway. Into the elevator. The lobby was quiet. One man behind the desk, flipping through a clipboard. I asked for the manager. He looked up, surprised, but nodded. I spoke clearly, calmly. Cancel all excursions under the Blake reservation. Disable the suite wristbands. Deactivate all keycards except mine. He asked if there was a problem. I said no, just a change of plans. He handed me a new keycard. I went back upstairs. I didn't speak. I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the sunrise leak across the sky like spilled blood. By noon, they came back from the beach, towels draped over their arms, sunglasses perched like crowns on their indifferent faces. Ashley reached for the door. The keycard blinked red. She tried again. Same result. Must be some mistake, Molly mumbled, her voice wavering just enough to sound guilty, but not enough to sound surprised. I watched from the lounge chair by the pool, newspaper in my lap. The silence between us roared louder than any desert wind. They didn't understand what had changed. Not yet, but I did. The rules were different now. The old rules? I pay, I endure, I stay quiet. I'm the stepfather. The man who absorbs the blame, smooths the edges, fills in the gaps left by someone else's absence. I bankroll everything and ask for nothing. But that morning something broke. Not like a twig snapping, like a ligament tearing. There's a sound the body makes when it finally gives up, when the strain you've ignored for years becomes rupture. I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. Ashley's voice echoed from the hallway. Seriously? What is this? I didn't look up. I didn't answer. She banged the door again. Molly reached for her phone. I had already removed their access from the reservation system. Their wristbands were void. Their excursions canceled. Their phone privileges restricted. Their little vacation bubble had popped. And all it took was 15 minutes and a single final decision. No yelling. No drama. Just subtraction. I watched them scramble. Watched them plead with the front desk. Molly's voice, tight with frustration. Ashley's louder, sharper, filled with the kind of entitlement you can't teach, only inherit. You can't just cancel things. You can't do that, right? I imagine the clerk tried to explain. Tried to show her that the reservation was under my name. That my credit card funded everything. That I had every right. They didn't understand that part. They never had. Later, they found me at the pool. Ashley stood over me, arms crossed, wet towel clinging to her legs. What is wrong with you? I turned the page. Molly tried to reason. This isn't the way to handle it, Edgar. I looked at her. Really looked. All I saw was a woman who had chosen her daughter over her husband. Not in one grand gesture. In hundreds of small ones. Letting Ashley interrupt. Letting her dismiss me. Letting her call me Edgar, like I was the groundskeeper instead of the man who paid the mortgage. I didn't say any of that. I didn't need to. I just said, "Your phone's still broken?" Ashley blinked. What? From when I smashed it. She went quiet, because we both knew it had never been broken. It had been a ploy. Another petty power grab. Another test I was supposed to fail. Molly shifted uncomfortably. I stood up, folding my towel neatly. I'll be gone before sundown, I said. Molly's mouth opened. Closed. Ashley scoffed. Good, she spat. That was the last word she said to me in that hotel. I walked past them, past the pool, past the clerk still recovering from the earlier tirade. Got into the rental car. Drove east until the hotel was behind me, and the desert swallowed the horizon. There was a small town 15 miles out. Gas station, 2 diners, and a low-slung motel that smelled like varnish and old tobacco. I took a room with 1 bed and no questions. Paid in cash. I didn't sleep much that night. The silence wasn't comforting. Not yet. But it was honest. And honesty was more than I'd had in years. The motel walls were thin. I could hear the man next door snoring like a dying truck engine. The air conditioner coughed lukewarm air, and the mattress was stiff enough to bruise bone. But it was mine. My room. My silence. I sat in the dark, half-dressed, feet on the stained carpet, staring at the dented minibar like it might offer clarity. Didn't. What I felt wasn't freedom. It was the quiet disorientation of a man who finally dropped the weight he'd carried too long, and wasn't sure what to do with his hands now. They started texting the moment I left. Ashley first. Her messages were the equivalent of glass bottles thrown at a wall, loud, senseless, and designed only to make a mess. All caps threats. Where are you? You can't just leave. You owe me. Not us. Me. Molly came later, always softer. That was her role. Good cop. Come back so we can talk. This isn't the time for drama. You're hurting Ashley. Never once did she say I was hurt. Never once did she ask why I left. They didn't see the motel room, the cracked mirror, the lamp that flickered when you touched it wrong, the man sitting there with a prepaid burner phone, a duffel bag, and the kind of resolve that doesn't look like anger, only absence. I ate from vending machines, slept in short, bitter stretches, kept my phone on silent. Not because I wanted to hide, because I knew they didn't want answers. They wanted me back in the script. Pay the bills. Swallow the blame. Nod when disrespected. Be the wall they can scream at, the floor they can walk on. But never the man they thank. By the 3rd day, the voice messages started. Molly's voice trembling, rising into tears. Then rage. Then back to tears. You're punishing us for nothing. You've humiliated me. You'll regret this. Ashley's messages weren't mixed. Just venom. You're a bitter old bastard. We told you not to come. You ruined everything. They never once said, I'm sorry. That was the final straw. Not the shouting. Not the accusations. Not even the lies. It was the silence around the truth. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was protecting myself. And when I realized they were never going to stop, when the texts turned from manipulation into veiled threats about our joint accounts, the house, the legal lines I hadn't crossed, I made the only rational move left. I called my lawyer. Her name was Dana Ellis. We'd met once before, years ago, when I updated my will. She had a voice like gravel and a memory like a steel trap. When I explained everything, the verbal abuse, the financial manipulation, the forged signature on a shared withdrawal months ago, she didn't gasp or ask follow-up questions. She just said, I've seen worse. We'll fix it. By the time the sun set that evening, I had frozen the joint accounts, initiated legal separation, started the process of reclaiming every asset I had funded alone. I gave Dana power of attorney over the shared financial structures, the checking accounts, the savings, even the card Molly used for groceries. She told me not to worry. I wasn't doing anything malicious, just protecting my perimeter. She also told me something I'll never forget. People like this don't think they've done anything wrong until the money stops. Then they call it betrayal. That night, I slept for 4 hours straight. Deep sleep. No dreams. No interruptions. The kind of sleep that comes after a slow death or maybe a rebirth. I drove into town the next morning. Picked up a burner phone from a convenience store. Paid cash. I didn't want to be tracked. Didn't want to be hacked. I had nothing to hide, but even less I was willing to explain. Molly tried calling the old number again. 53 missed calls. I deleted the voicemail inbox without listening to a single one. I sent her a single text. Any contact going forward will go through my attorney. 2 hours later, Dana called to confirm that Molly had received the message and responded by attempting to withdraw money from a joint credit line. It was denied. An hour after that, Ashley posted a thinly veiled rant on social media. Men who act like their victims are just weak predators. I didn't respond. I wasn't following her. Dana had people for that. Screenshot. Timestamp. Pattern of harassment. That evening I checked the suite reservation. Molly and Ashley had checked out early. No forwarding info, but the final bill showed multiple room service charges, all filed after I left. Spa visits, gift shop purchases, expensive wine, and a brand new phone billed to the room. They had stayed on my dime for 48 hours after I left, and still found a way to feel abandoned. The next day, Dana filed an injunction, emergency separation filing. We attached proof of financial misconduct, unauthorized spending, and verbal harassment. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming the ground under my feet. 3 days later, I was back in my home state, rented a temporary apartment near the lake, a place with no mail forwarding, no shared walls. Dana met me there with papers to sign. We filed to retain the house, filed to separate the vehicles, froze any remaining accounts. Molly, despite her confidence, had never legally added her name to the deed. I had proof, closing statements, title records, all untouched. In silence, I had kept everything clean, because some part of me, even in the worst years, knew I might need to leave one day. And when that day came, I would leave without permission. Molly sent one last text before the court date. Don't do this to Ashley. She's young. She makes mistakes. I didn't reply. I wanted to say, she made no mistake. She told the truth. But the truth doesn't need defense. It just waits. And the truth was this. They didn't love me. They loved my utility. The things I paid for. The way I absorbed impact without flinching. I was a wall until I wasn't. The hearing was scheduled for Monday. They showed up together. Matching black dresses. Hair straightened. Faces set. Ashley looked furious. Molly looked frightened. Or maybe just confused, like a woman who couldn't understand why the ATM machine suddenly had a face and an opinion. Dana handled most of it. But I sat there, silent, watching. Molly tried to argue abandonment. Claimed I had emotionally manipulated the family by withdrawing support. Ashley claimed I financially humiliated her in public by canceling her hotel wristband. Dana let them talk. Then she stood. For documents. Video stills from the hotel hallway. Ashley screaming, Molly silent. Receipts showing Ashley's new phone, purchased post-departure, charged to my card. Screenshot of forged digital signature on a transfer of $3,000 from our shared account. Social media post calling me a predator. The judge didn't say much. He didn't need to. His ruling was quick, quiet, cold. The house was mine. So were the vehicles. Ashley's debts? Not my responsibility. Molly's claim to spousal assets? Denied, pending final divorce filings. My lawyer would handle the rest. I didn't look at them as we left the courtroom, but I heard Ashley's voice behind me. He was never part of this family anyway. The last straw wasn't her words. It was Molly's silence. No rebuttal. No correction. Not even a glance. The final straw wasn't made of wood. It was made of absence. And it broke everything. I didn't go back to the house. Couldn't. Not after the hearing. Not after hearing Ashley say I was never part of the family. The walls would have remembered. The furniture, the tile I laid with my own hands, the dented baseboard Ashley kicked during a tantrum 2 years ago. All of it would have whispered her words back to me. So I left it behind. Temporarily. Legally, it was mine. But emotionally, that place had become a mausoleum. I found a rental north of town. Small, secluded. Lake 10 minutes away. 2 rooms. No shared walls. No history. Place that didn't know me. I slept on a mattress on the floor for the first week. My back screamed. I didn't care. Pain felt honest. Every morning I'd sit on the porch with burnt coffee and watch the trees sway like they were mourning something too. Sometimes the wind would catch just right, and I'd forget I was mourning anything at all. Then the phone would buzz. Ashley started messaging again. But the tone had shifted. Her first text after the hearing was just one word. Seriously? The next? You really think you're a saint now? Then came silence. For 5 days. On the 6th, she sent a photo. A blurry shot of her standing in front of some apartment building I didn't recognize. Her caption, I guess I'm on my own now. Congrats. Like I'd won a game we were both too tired to keep playing. Molly sent a voice message the same night. 2 minutes long. Her voice soft, careful, performed. I didn't mean for it to get this far, Edgar. I thought you were just trying to scare us. I thought we could talk. Ashley's hurting. I'm hurting. You've made your point. There was no apology. Just an invitation to reset the cycle. No, not an invitation, a lure. Like bait left just outside the trap. I didn't take it. Instead, I printed out the final court order. Folded it in thirds. Pinned it to the cheap corkboard in the kitchen next to a grocery list. One document that said, you don't owe them anymore. The next Monday, Dana finalized the asset freezes. Molly's name came off everything. Ashley's debt was reclassified under her own SSN. One by one, the strings were clipped, like a puppet finally laid to rest. I expected relief. But what came was something worse, quiet resentment. Not toward them, toward myself. For waiting so long, I started seeing a therapist. The office was inside a strip mall between a vape shop and a tax prep kiosk. Her name was Carol. She didn't smile much, and I respected that. Too many people fake warmth. She didn't. She just asked questions, listened, and nodded like someone unafraid of silence. After 2 sessions, she said, you're grieving a role more than a relationship. I didn't answer at first, just stared at the fraying edge of the carpet. Say that again, I said finally. She did, and that's when it clicked. I'd been mourning the idea of being a husband, provider, a father, even if not in name. But the people, Molly, Ashley, I wasn't grieving them. I was grieving who I thought I was supposed to be, who I had worked so hard to become. But none of that mattered if it only existed in my mind. I told her about the time Ashley failed a college class, and I paid out of pocket so she wouldn't lose her scholarship, and how she never said thank you. About the time Molly forgot my birthday, and when I reminded her, she said, well, you're not really into that stuff anyway. I told her about Christmas 2 years ago, when I bought Ashley a laptop, the exact model she asked for, only to find it unopened a month later, still sealed in the box, sitting under a pile of clothes in the laundry room. Carol didn't react. She just said, "It sounds like you were useful, but never loved." I didn't go back for 2 weeks after that. Not because I was angry, because she was right. You can't unlearn that kind of truth overnight. One afternoon, I drove back to the old neighborhood, parked across the street from the house, just sat there. No one was home, at least not visibly. The windows were dark. The grass hadn't been mowed in a week. I looked at the place I used to call mine, and felt nothing. Not nostalgia, not bitterness, just a vacancy. Then I drove away. A week later, I got the email from my accountant. Short, direct. They tried to use the shared tax refund. Denied per new filing status. Attached was a screenshot of Molly's login attempt. The same email address she used to order bath bombs and wine subscriptions. I forwarded it to Dana. She responded with a thumbs-up emoji. It made me laugh for the first time in months. Another few days passed. Then Ashley called from a blocked number. I answered by accident, thinking it was work. She didn't say hello. She said, "I talked to a lawyer." I waited. "He says you might owe me something, actually." I said nothing. Like emotional damages or something. The sudden financial cutoff? It was like traumatic. There could be grounds for. I hung up. She tried again. Left a voicemail. I didn't listen. Dana said, "They're trying to provoke you into an overreaction." I nodded. Let them try. The following week, I opened a new checking account. Moved the last of my funds. Sold the second car. Closed the joint credit line that had sat dormant since the separation. I started paying for everything in cash or debit. Nothing traceable. Nothing shared. For the first time in 20 years, my money was mine. And that made everything feel heavier and somehow cleaner. I cooked dinner for myself now. Basic stuff. Eggs, rice, chicken. No one rolled their eyes. No one asked for substitutions. No one texted while I set the table. I ate in silence, and it felt like peace. Then, one morning, Ashley sent another photo. Plastic cup. Red straw. A lime wedge floating in some cheap cocktail. Her caption read, "I told her you were right." No context. No follow-up. Just that. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care. Because I'd stopped mistaking crumbs for closure. I saved the photo. Not because it mattered. Because it proved what I always suspected. They knew. They knew they'd crossed the line. That they'd taken and taken, and when I finally stopped giving, it wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. And now? They wanted the version of me that gave without asking for respect. But that man was gone. He died in a hotel suite in Arizona. Quietly, without ceremony. When a grown woman screamed in his face and her mother looked away. The man who replaced him. He lives near a lake. Alone. With a spine. Mornings are quiet now. No voices through walls. No demands before coffee. No Ashley yelling down the stairs. "You forgot to get oat milk again." No Molly pacing in socked feet, whispering into the phone like I wasn't 4 feet away. There's a different kind of silence in this place. Not absence, not loneliness. Just space. Just mine. The lake house isn't luxurious. It's a short-term rental, 2 bedrooms, crooked floorboards in the hallway. The windows fog up in the mornings, and the heat clicks off at random intervals. But I wake up here without dread. That alone is worth more than anything I left behind. The porch looks out over still water. There's a bench bolted to the dock. Sometimes I sit there with a coffee that's gone cold and count how many boats pass by before noon. Usually 2, maybe 3. People out there trying to enjoy something before winter comes again. I understand that now, grabbing whatever version of peace you can, even if it's small, even if it doesn't last. There's a word people use when they talk about divorce. Failure. They'll say the marriage failed. That you couldn't make it work. That you gave up. They say it like staying would have meant victory. Like absorbing disrespect until it calcifies inside your chest is some kind of noble prize. But I don't think I failed. I think I finally told the truth. And that truth started with a sentence no man forgets. You're not my real dad. Ashley never said those exact words. But she didn't need to. Every silence, every rolled eye, every time she turned to Molly instead of me, it all said the same thing. I was a placeholder, an ATM with a pulse, a man who stood where her father should have been and paid dearly for it. And Molly? She didn't just let it happen. She curated it. She padded it in excuses, called it adjustment, young adulthood, growing pains. But the truth is simpler. She chose her daughter. Every time. Even when her daughter lied. Even when her daughter screamed. Even when her daughter accused me of things that would have cost me my reputation, my finances, my sanity. Molly chose to keep the peace instead of keep her word. And that's what broke us. Not the hotel. Not the court. It was the thousand quiet ways, the smile that never reaches the eyes anymore. The hand that doesn't reach back when you need it most. After the court ruling, I didn't hear from Molly for 6 weeks. Nothing. No calls. No emails. Just stillness. Then, out of nowhere, she sent me a letter. Real paper. Folded in 3 parts. Postmarked from a city I didn't recognize. It smelled faintly like her perfume. The note inside wasn't long. Edgar, I've been thinking. About everything. About you. About the time we had. I know you don't want to hear from me. And maybe you never will again. But I need to say this. You were right. I let things happen. I watched and did nothing. I made you carry us. I didn't defend you when I should have. I kept quiet to avoid conflict. And in doing so, I made you the enemy. I'm sorry. I hope you find peace. That was it. No begging. No asking me to come back. Just an apology. Too late, yes. But real. I didn't write back. I didn't burn the letter either. I just folded it back up, slid it into the drawer next to my bed, and left it there. That's where it belongs, close enough to remember, far enough not to reach. Ashley never apologized. She just faded. After the photo of the cocktail and the vague confession, I told her you were right. She went quiet. Her number never changed, but the messages stopped. No new insults. No sarcasm. Nothing. I suppose some debts are paid in silence. Last week, Dana texted me. Said she saw Ashley's name on a freelance hiring board copywriting jobs. Short gigs. A girl looking for footing. You want me to monitor her attempts to challenge the ruling? She asked. I replied, no. Let her build something of her own now. Because that's what this was really about. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just letting go of what was never mine. A few days ago, I ran into an old friend at the gas station. Doug. Worked with him on construction crews back in the 90s. He didn't ask about Molly. Just nodded at the rental and said, finally got some quiet, huh? I said, something like that. He handed me a black coffee, the kind that burns the tongue. You look better. I didn't feel better, but I knew what he meant. When you stop lying to yourself, your face changes. Your spine straightens. You start walking like someone who knows the ground under his feet is his. That's the thing nobody tells you about being a stepfather. There's a role written in vanishing ink. You can give your time, your money, your years, but if they don't choose you back, it's all just a shadow play. You're the silhouette of a father, the echo of a man they never wanted, no matter how much he gave. And I gave everything, every birthday gift, every school payment, every ride to every dentist, every concert ticket, every late-night meal run. And in return, silence, contempt, and finally, a sentence I'll never unhear. You were never part of this family anyway. That was the bill. And I paid it. I paid it by walking away. I paid it by reclaiming my name from the mud they dragged it through. I paid it by learning the hardest lesson of all. You can't save people who feed on your sacrifice. You can't buy respect with consistency. And you should never, ever build a home where your name is only good when it's on a credit card. Now I sit here, on this bench, coffee in hand, watching the light shift across the lake like time itself is trying to decide whether to forgive me. And I wonder if I was too cold, if I should have waited one more day, given them one more chance, If maybe I could have salvaged something, a marriage, a truce, a hint of belonging. But then I remember the way Molly looked at me that night in the hotel. Not shocked, not sorry, just tired. Tired of me taking up space she'd long since reserved for someone else. And I remember Ashley's voice behind me in court. He was never part of this family anyway. That was the legacy they left me. So I built a new one. It doesn't have family photos. It doesn't have birthday dinners. It doesn't have traditions I faked to make them feel normal. It has peace, boundaries, honesty, and that's enough. So now I ask you, whoever you are, wherever you're sitting, was I wrong? Was I cruel for walking away? Or did I simply refuse to keep feeding people who bit the hand that fed them? If you were me, would you have stayed? Would you have endured it? Or would you have done what I did? Closed the door and let them live in the house they built without me?